Hello, welcome to this 88 series sixth episode. Usually I put the last slide of the last video as the first one, but not always, and this is one of those times that I did not. So we're just going to keep rolling here with the lead up because I said it a million years ago at this point that I would soon talk about Poseidon's trident, and we're getting there in different ways. Hopefully the window being open isn't too loud. But at the top here it says Poseidon, trident, Poseidon, trident, creator, crafter, spice, mace. So it's some wordplay, some etymology as we build up to speak on this. And so it's all connected and it's a continuance of if you've been watching this string of threads, like you could say, rather than me weaving, I am just pointing things out from the thread factory. I don't know what I'm saying, but I do. So yeah, here we have mace. This says spice, and I won't read everything that I'm about to show because there is a lot of text. Spice made from dry outer husk of nutmeg. Macis, a word of uncertain origin, sometimes said to be a scribal error for Latin macer, the name of a red spicy bark from India. But OED finds this etymology unlikely. So yet another thing that word that it has uncertain origin to a degree, but there's a lot of connections here where I'm not saying that what I'm pointing out is right. I'm just speaking from a place of living my life purposefully, not learning a lot of stories and supposed written history. So sometimes it's like how things sound, but it doesn't always feel the same way. So I'm not even really saying that words are spells in the same way others might also. So often used in devices people carry for protection against an aggressor or predator. Although mace, if I recall, I might included it. I might have included it in here. But there's, different forms of what mace is. So just I digress. Let me continue. A ceremonial staff borne or displayed as the symbol of authority of a legislative body. A mace bearer, a heavy medieval war club with a spiked or flanged metal head used to crush armor. Isn't it funny how things tie together? So this mention of spice, we have basil, coriander, anise, and now nutmeg. Spice, spices, species, swap the letters around and you get Pisces spices. Spice, vegetable substance, aromatic or pungent to the taste, added to food or drink to enhance the flavor. A spice used as a medication or an alchemical ingredient. Spices, good, wares, so some Gemini, Virgo energies there. An aromatic spice, spices as commodities. We have that business energy coming into play. A spice-bearing plant, attractive or enjoyable variation, slight touch or trace of something, specimen, sample. Early druggists recognized four types of spices: saffron, clove, cinnamon, nutmeg. Spice as a verb, to season with spices, prepare with a condiment or seasoning. The figurative sense of to vary or diversify. So just it's not like I'm saying it's not even literally about what I'm talking about necessarily. It's just that, have you ever had that conversation with someone where you use a word differently than they do and they just think they're right? So they want you to use the word the way they use it, and that's it. That's the right definition. I just don't always know what's right or correct fully and wholly, and maybe other people do, and that is their role. I feel my role is more so not to tell everyone what to do, but to point out possibility and potential and flip things and see them in a zillion different angles, or maybe just 18 different angles. I don't know. Species, a class of individuals or things, a particular sort, kind, or type, opposed to genus, originally a sight, look, view, outward appearance, shape, um, form, a derivative of specere, to look at, to see, to behold. So, interestingly enough, when I just threw species out there, it was because literally I was talking about something within all of this and different spices, different species. I don't know. It was just there. And then I said the Pisces spices. And so to see just right there, class of individuals, and then actually this is outward appearance, shape, form, which all has their connections. Like you could see the form of a class of individuals to a degree. That's how you're going to recognize the differences. To look at, to see, to behold. So we even have more layers here of the Pisces energy and the Virgo energy, which will continue to unfold here. A sight, outward appearance, a spectacle, a mental appearance, an idea or notion, a semblance. Let's see, what else do I want to read here? A likeness or statue, reputation, honor, beauty, display, a special case, a class included under a higher class, a kind, a sort, a number of individuals having common characteristics peculiar to them. Um, so yeah, a distinct class of something based on common characteristics. And so you could say over time, different words have shifted, but let's just continue on here. On the right, I just included, and I don't remember, I don't think I expand on it here, but I will at some point, different names of supposed human species and the supposed evolution of humankind, but also an ideology that I'll propose about like peripheral vision and mind and memory, and how some extraterrestrial or alien forms could also be this supposed other species of humans to a degree, and messages that would be maybe important for us. Like if time is not as linear as our minds organize it to be, it doesn't mean it isn't linear at all, but it doesn't mean it's all there is either. So there's something um uh, to a degree, learning to let go of a concept or an ideology, not to lose yourself. But if you're too attached to it, you can figure that out by just the idea of letting something go. But just to observe and explore from a different lens. It doesn't mean you don't come back to something, but I personally think it's really important to play around with things. At the bottom, I did note that in this context, MYA, Maya means a million years ago. So you'll see that when certain people, or, this is from Wikipedia, are speaking about like human species and also like different shifts within the solar system. Properties of basil, coriander, anise, and mace. Basil, coriander, and anise are for cooking with love. So take this with a grain of salt. This is, I forget which website, but it was, a little bit, probably somewhat of like a, how do I make notifications be quiet? I don't understand. Just turn them all off. Sorry, I just am distracted by this. Yeah, we don't need sounds for everything. Okay, so I got this from some website that was maybe a little bit of witchcrafty kind of stuff, not full on, but enough of the dipping into playing with herbs and spices with themes, planetary, astrological, etc. So I say take it with a grain of salt because that was the name of the class that I presented this through, but also literally I mean it when I say I lived my life not with blinders on, but being very, very mindful of what I let in context wise of stories and scripts to a degree. So I don't have an attachment to seeing certain things certain ways. I don't demonize certain things in the same ways others will because I felt pretty free exploring certain things as a kid, but I also felt very isolated. Let's say, for example, my sister, super into mythology and some of the stuff I'm talking about, but we never talked about that stuff. I felt like very alone, and nothing really clicked with me. So this is like an expansion of this exploration as an adult, you could say. So for anise, hi Fox. Well, we have protection, purification, youth, Jupiter, anise, pimpinella, anisum. Basil, it's connected to Mars. It says love, wealth, flying, protection, and it's also called devil plant. Sweet basil, Ocimum basilicum. Coriander, love, health, healing, also a Mars energy, and then mace, psychic powers, mental powers. It's a Mercury energy called Virgin Mary's Nest, nutmeg, myristica fragrans. We'll play soon. I hope you ate some of the food I gave you. All he wants to do is play. The note is a bottom. Wait, the bottom has a note that is from when I did the class, but we're talking about different etymology because that actually was the last recording too. Different etymology of the word king when we were talking about basil. And then that led me to spices, which then made me think of terpenes and their amazing properties. So, mind you, with most things, it doesn't need to be like intense contention, but we all have different opinions on things. So you don't have to agree with me, but I do speak about terpenes at some point. So I'm not going to read all these things about basil. The website that I got that from is there, Spiritual Arc, whatever that is. Um, but the idea at the bottom here, what does it say? Cultivating basil promotes mindfulness and deepens spiritual connections, making it a versatile tool in spiritual practices. And at the bottom it says Galen and Dioscorides both considered basil poisonous, but others like Pliny and the herbalists of the Arab world thought it a beneficial herb. Culpeper considered it a Mars herb ruled by Scorpio and therefore especially helpful for treating the bites of venomous martial creatures like wasps. This is a lust herb, and the aroma calls forth sexual energy. So just sharing some of the different lenses of that. And then again, it means king. So properties of coriander and the etymology of coriander starts with the Greek corianon, combination of chorus, a stinking bug, and anon, a fragrant anise. Hmm. So, in what are we gonna say? I'm not gonna read all of these things either. Um, as you know. Basically the idea is it can help with some layers of freedom. So at the bottom, I'll just read the bottom again. As you incorporate coriander into your sacred offerings, remember its powerful symbolism and let its fragrance carry your prayers to the heavens, where they'll be met with divine favor and freedom. At the bottom, we have cilantro, coriander. Cilantro is the leaf. Coriander is the seed, okay, of this tasty herb. Ruled by Mars and used in love and lust magic. If the seeds are worn, it will help with migraine headaches. Oh, I kind of have a migraine today. Used in flavoring foods, great in salsa and chutney, used in love and healing magic. I personally don't practice magic in this sense, but I do love to make and cook and bake. And I don't always follow recipes. It's more of like a feeling and like I just feel like I need a little bit of this and then a little bit of that. But I wouldn't mind using some of the coriander seeds I have to help with my migraine. I might make a tea or like it says here, did it just say like just wearing them? How am I going to wear them? I don't know. Um, oh yeah, properties of anise. So one time I swallowed a whole anise star, um, and it delivered pain and knowledge to me. Um, I was at an Indian restaurant with my ex and they gave us a dessert at this restaurant and I just like ate it and then I was like dying and I remember asking my ex like is this normal? And he didn't get what happened, but everybody else's dessert, which I did not see, had a star anise sitting on top of it. Mine had like fallen underneath the j jam type whatever. I didn't see it. So I literally like oh my gosh, one of the worst experiences ever. But I guess it brought me wisdom too. It says that it's a wonderful or can be a wonderful new moon scent. So this is from Alchemy Works, this website, connected to the star in tarot, and that's Aquarius energy. So related again to psychic ability, and there are some things there if you wanted to do with anise, but we're not focused on all of that. Mace. What do I want to say about mace? It's made from the waxy red covering, which covers nutmeg seeds. It's completely different from the protective pepper spray with the same name. So that's earlier what I was like, I forget if I noted that. Yeah, a name is interesting to be, someone calling something mace, but it's different than the mace. That's the mace. It's like, what's different? Mace, it's not that mace, it's this mace, you know? Some more psychic awareness. It's a winter spice. It says along with cardamom, clove, nutmeg, ginger, cinnamon, and coriander. I'm not gonna read all this. Take it all with a grain of salt, a grain of salt, a grain of spice. Now back to the trident. So when it comes to stories, there are many about who created, crafted, and forged Poseidon's trident, amongst other mythological weapons and tools. And this story is what began the notes that I took in 2024 that led to the class that I taught for 6 months. I don't know if I could call it a class that I taught. It was more, I mean, whatever. I just don't like being called a teacher, so I don't need to get into that now. But let's talk a little bit about these stories. One of the stories is that the Cyclops are the ones who forged the trident. For the ancient Greeks, the name Cyclops meant circle eyes or round eyes, derived from the Greek kuklos, circle, and ops, eye. This meaning can be seen as early as Hesiod's Theogony, which explains that the Cyclops were called that since a single circle-shaped eye was set in their foreheads. Um, okay. Aldebert Kuhn, I'm not sure if I pronounce things correctly. Forgive me, everybody. Expanding on Hesiod's etymology, proposed a connection between the first element kuklos, which can also mean wheel, and the wheel of the sun, producing the meaning the wheel of the sun eyes, wheel eyes. Other etymologies have been proposed, which derive the second element of the name from the name from the Greek klops, meaning thief, producing the meanings wheel thief, or deriving the first element from Proto-Indo-European piku, cattle thief. Although Walter Burkert had described Hesiod's etymology as not too attractive, Hesiod's explanation still finds acceptance by modern scholars. So interesting, Ops as Poseidon's mother, in some cases, like we went over before, Ops meaning eye. Kuklos, circle, mention of circle so far, and more to come. So we've already mentioned circle, and we will again. Wheel, if you remember, we talked about the solar plexus. We did talk about a color wheel and other wheels to a degree, but we did talk about that wheel with the Virgo energy and the solar plexus. Something I also want to point out here is it's fun to consider, we have cattle thief, and often cattle would be connected to, let's say, like a Taurus energy, and cows and cattle were worshipped. Some say the vernal period before the more current one, with Aries at the head of the astrology zodiac, that it used to be Taurus, and Aries did not exist. So take that on with a grain of salt. I don't know things. However, cattle thief, wheel thief. I have some theories that have to do with my own lore, Pythagoras lore, some things that I find people interpret in a specific way that might not be what it is. So not that I'm right, but it's kind of like let's not be too reactive or repressive, and let's like share. Let's be curious openly, which can be like kind of intimidating depending on who you're around. I mean, I'm just like talking to my laptop here, but when I did this class, it was the first time that I was just like sharing my crazy ideas. So I will continue to do that. And something I'm saying here is that I find being in a physical body, don't love it all the time. I love it. It's great. It's amazing. But you could say this human experience, that is one of the very baseline things that we all have in common, and it's not unique to any of us. We are in a physical body. I might not all look the same or function the same, but just being here is a lot. Being perceived, having a name, having a face, having a role, knowing that like that role will be different, blah, blah, blah. I find sometimes even the interpretations of, let's say, something like Metatronic energy and certain base geometry, I feel that it is somewhat, even though there are nefarious stories that I believe that that's what has happened. And right now we're replaying things with our mind. Like it's almost like very passive things. And now we're doing it to ourselves and we have to like somehow change the story. So, just this idea that maybe some of the interpretation is that the certain geometry is connected more to an imaginative realm or a mental plane or an emotional plane, which could be related to certain chakras and auric layers, atmospheric layers. But then also this physical, it's a little different geometry. It's a little different. We can close our eyes. We don't have to, but we can go a lot of places here with ourselves and other people that takes physically a little different of a route. And maybe that's not how it is forever, but I feel like there's some reason that we're at this point in time that we are, and that maybe part of it is related to. Sorry, I'm trying to turn off this TV. I must have turned something on. I'm up, my parents are out of town. I'm up in their living room. I clearly don't know how to work their TV. Okay, so what was I saying? Oh, that hold on a second. I had to give Fox some food, although I don't know if he's eating the food I gave him. I've made them raw food for a while. Um, and then due to some recent shifts this year, I have mixed up. I don't need to be saying all this, but I am. Actually, you know what? It doesn't matter. But I might have to pause it again if he comes in here. I need to encourage him to eat. Hey Bob, now there's my other cat. Hello. So part of what I was saying is just that I think sometimes things are made to be a repetitive, perpetual horror story. So maybe some things are like, yeah, that's a fucked up thing that person did and that group of people did. And you could say those bad aliens. But what if we're at a different spot than we maybe were told we were or perceived to some dimensional layer that we are? And actually the big bad isn't, you okay? Actually, the big the big bad isn't like this network that will never change and has always been da, 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 but let's say also like just being in a body, coming into physical form, the dimensional plane of materialization that presents forth that we all go through, that it's like you come here and then you're like, oh, what the fuck am I doing here? Because it's kind of like the Dark Ages to some degree, but again, I do believe we got to change the story so the story changes. All right, let me continue here. And one other story is that the Telchines forged the trident. That might not be how you pronounce it, but that's how we're going to pronounce it. We being me. When I saw the word, I was more curious about them than the Cyclops because I've heard about them, but I was not familiar with the Telchines. And as I mentioned, there are many stories about this too. So let's play with them. I won't go too deep or literal or even logical, but follow along if you'd like. One of the I just added craziest in there. One of the craziest ideas. It doesn't say that. One of the ideas is that the Telkines were the OG inhabitants of the island Rhodes, with connection, Chios, Sia, Kia, Crete, Cyprus, depending on the story. We're looking at Rhodes, though. Maybe they were born from Thalassa, the personification of the sea. Some even say Poseidon is their father. Another story says that Poseidon's mother, Rhea, gave infant Poseidon to the Telkines for protection. They, along with Kaphira, an 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 oceanid nymph as his nurse, raised him. As Poseidon grew, he fell in love with Halia, the beautiful sister of the Telkines, and fathered six sons and one daughter, Rhodes. He fathered them on her. Greek myth. Halia, of course, brings in the energy of salt to an even deeper layer here, and more on that soon. We have the Roman name being Salacia, and a trigger warning that this next page mentions rape. It is said that later, when Aphrodite was born and rose from the sea, she attempted to make a stop in Rhodes on her way to Cyprus. Poseidon and Halia's sons denied her hospitality and instead abused her. Aphrodite cursed them with madness, and they raped their mother, Halia, and committed many violent acts upon the native people. Poseidon banned them to the underground caves. Halia cast herself at sea and then became Leucothea, the white goddess, a nod back to Atlas, goddess of the sailors. Although in other stories, Leucothea comes from a different source. And of course, there are more stories, but before going into any others, let's look at the name. I know this may not feel appropriate to say when a story involves that. And when I read Rape Mother, I'm whispering it. I don't want to say it too loudly. And I continue to insist that these stories reflect layers of elements, chemistry, and our bodies. I also sees Earth, Mother as Gaia as Earth. And this reminds me of how in the Salts of Salvation book, they approach it like the robbing of the regenerative energy. The word with etymology meaning seize, prey, abduct, take, and carry off by force. And these acts made by male or positive or electric energy to female negative magnetic energy that arose from the water. So you have Aphrodite and Venus risen from the foam, and you could also relate her or Venus to copper. These six sons were born from water and salt, which also makes me think a little bit about structured water being called hexagonal water. And this is when water molecules cluster together in a hexagonal grid that can hold electric charge and better hydrate cells, supposedly. Ice and snowflakes naturally form, what does that say? I'm pretty sure it just says hexagonal lattices, but I forgot that I changed the text. Yes, they naturally form in hexagonal lattices. So we're going to be expanding more on ice and snow based on what we're talking about here. So I'm not trying to at all say that people don't do awful things, but when it comes to mythology and these stories, and especially what I'm talking about, I don't know how I piece this all together like this. It's not going to make sense to some people, but it's also related to a current state of certain flows and water and memory. So, Poseidon, Trident, Telkines, and then I have the word water there for whatever reason. So, what is the science behind the metallic taste? So this is about drinking water out of a copper cup. So it says, how and why water tastes different in a copper cup. When copper and water combine, they produce a chemical show. You may have studied chemical reactions in science class, and this is how it works. The cup's material, copper, reacts with oxygen from the air. This reaction creates a super thin layer of copper oxide on the surface of the copper. So that's the reaction. And then we're talking, it says that this copper oxide, it's not the end of the story. It can react with another familiar substance, carbon dioxide. And when we talk about the air we breathe, we frequently bring up carbon dioxide. It's all over the place. It's okay, Bob. When copper oxide reacts with carbon dioxide, they combine to form copper carbonate. And this is how the reaction looks. In the story, and so it's funny because this is just, they're not talking about the story I told, but I'm relating this to it. Copper carbonate is the magical ingredient. This is why your water tastes different. The copper carbonate can mix with the water you're drinking, especially if the water has a slight acidity, similar to sourness. When copper carbonate is dissolved in water, it releases copper ions. So I'm sort of relating this to Halia throwing herself at sea as well after this and being released into a different form. Take that all with a grain of salt. The fate of copper added to surface water. So this is just another lens, a different sort of look. We'll just read the top part. It says the fate and effects of copper in the environment are governed by a complex set of environmental processes that include binding to inorganic and organic ligands in water, soil, and sediments. In natural waters, these interactions can limit copper bioavailability and result in copper transport from the water column to the sediment. In the present study, data on the fate of copper added to lakes, microcosms, and mesocosms were compiled and analyzed to determine copper removal rates from the water column. Um, I'm not going to read more, but I'm highlighting this to say that there are layers, and I'll mention some more about copper a little later. But different ways to view these things when it comes to not making it about men or women necessarily, but this process of acknowledgement, realization, and recognition. And again, like changing the story so the story changes. So we can become triggered and reactive in certain ways or repressed, but we can also stay here now and be curious and open up a little bit more to moving a little differently, seeing certain parts of life as an experiment and collaborating with people who do want to build together in certain directions. And we aren't going to all want to build in the same directions. So telchines, telkis as the singular form, T-E-L, tel. Tel meaning mound, hill, tall, lofty, mount, heap, woman's breast. Tell, meaning far, far off, afar, operating over or over distance, at or to. Uh, Telios, end goal, completion, result. And this is a nod back to the time when I mentioned Talos from Marvel. Quell, far in space or time. Telepathy, feeling from afar. Teles, this word. Teles, telesthesia. Teles, I'm sorry. Sometimes words make me laugh, and I've got made fun of a lot at school for certain things. So then it makes me laugh because I'm a little nervous, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I stupid? But I know I'm not alone in this. Oh, is there someone out back, Bob? Bob's looking in the backyard, like, and sometimes cats walk through the backyard. Also, sometimes foxes and raccoons do, deer. Okay. La la la, where was I? Tale, piece of info, story, narrative, fable, statement or relation of events alleged to be true. Blame, accusation, talk, act of telling, speech, discourse, that which is told, an account of things in their due order. Keen or chine, spine, backbone. Akeen, eskeen, skinu, shinbone. Equine, horse. Cauda equina, the tail of the horse, which is also medically the way that our lumbar and tailbone are referred to in some anatomy and physiology. Echine. The Telchines were described as having skin like a sea urchin. Echinoderm, sea urchin. Echinos, hedgehog. Echida, snake, viper. Equity, even, just, equal. Echane, to sound, to ring. Eke, echo, which we've already touched on slightly and we'll come back to. Chine can also reference in Chinese fashion, to color in Chinese fashion. Sanskrit, Sina, the Chinas, in Indian literature referencing characters from Hindu epics like Mahabharata. Some Chinese and Indian scholars argued for the state of Jing. Um, Sorry, for a second, I'm like, is that how you pronounce it? Again, I don't always remember things. Jing as the likely origin of the name China or Sina. And then this is a nod from me back to the kidneys and the Jing. And another nod back to that Atlas comet. No, not the one everyone's talking about right now. The one people were talking about before. When I wrote these, and when I referenced 2024, September 2024's eclipse season. And chine makes me think of coin or keen. And given that the Telchines were metallurgists, forging of metals is definitely present. So we have net worth and other nods to stories. How common has it become for someone to be branded? Busyness and people wanting to be known for something, wanting to be credited, referred to, etc. Um, I don't know what I was going to write there. To me, something. Coined by, get your coin. Tell, telepathy. Tell, far off. Coin, chine, keen. It has been very common in history for someone with power to want their face on the currency, on the coins. Etymology of coin. We have a wedge-shaped piece used for some purpose. Stamp, piece of money. We also have a cheese wedge, fruit wedge, wedge with an axe, with form, etc. A wedge or a coin in a door or an expression. Koine is an architecture and masonry with the Q. This means cornerstone, external solid angle, variant of coin, wedge, wedge-like piece of stone. And then we have another spelling, coin with a G, also coin with a G and an E, archaic spelling of coin with a Q. Makes me think of keystone. And salts of salvation, again, nod, a Sagittarius, at the anatomy of the hips, the etymology of horse, and Sagittarius being related to Jupiter, Zeus riding a horse energy or a chariot with a horse, an arrow, also spring, which is connected to the word arrow, and wedge to a degree. The keystone, though, is the stone in the middle of an arch. It's the uppermost stone. Although people might have, this might be more figurative. That which holds up the others, holds together other parts. You could say the solar plexus and the hips. Keystone, chief element of a system. Key, instrument for opening locks. Solution, explanation, that which opens the way, that which explains. Then we have stone, curdles, becomes hard. To thicken, stiffen. Curdles, becomes hard, fat, tallow, pebble, element, mineral, cell salt, etc. Okay, we're building up here. I'm gonna pause this 1 second. I had to check and make sure I didn't miss it, but it's just the way that I tell stories is like, woo. So I'm still building up to the Telkines and who they were. So we have more about stone, keystone, and keys. Let me I should probably have fixed the text, like I said, for some of this, but it is what it is. One, a central stone at the summit of an arch, locking the whole together. Keystone, the central principle or part of a policy, system, etc., on which all else depends. Cornerstone, capstone, linchpin, hub. So we have a nod back to that capstone, that Doric energy, that 10th chakra, 10th auric layer, etc., 10th dimensional level, Chronos, Saturn, Capricorn, etc., 12 sign, Sag, and 13 sign. Fitting as we are in sidereal. Okay, when I made these, we were in sidereal. We will be in a bit. Um, but so just disregard that last bit. Related arch foundation capstone. And here are, oh, pillar. I didn't read that one for some reason. Here are some antonyms that contrast with the central and critical nature of a keystone. We have peripheral, which is very fitting for some later conversations on peripheral vision and the nervous system. Minor, secondary, trivial. Um, 10 idioms similar to Keystone. So idioms reflect the cultural richness of a language, offering analogies similar to Keystone. The apple of discord. Very funny. Again, very fitting. All of these things all wrapped up. Me just going, let's take a look at this. And you see again how you can find anything and everything or everything and anything. It just depends on you looking and being that eye, the heart of the matter, the crux of the issue, the meat of the argument, the backbone of the plan, the cornerstone of the community, the bedrock of society, the salt of the earth, the thread that holds it all together, the glue that binds us. Oh, glue like fascia. Branding. Branding. It can be done to flesh by application of extremes of cold or heat. Sumerian Egyptian invasion lends to, I would say, some of the most recent business when business shifted even more in this plane. I'm not saying it is all bad business, but not all business is all bad. It's not all off, it's not all evil, but there is a whole lot of ego and pride involved in the fabric of the foundations. Is someone willing to be open and connective, or will they double, triple, even quadruple down for the gained credit or perceived reputation, rather than say, that you don't even need to say I was wrong, but that I have changed, or my business motto is now different because I am different. And I find sometimes rather than be open, which to each their own, people will operate under a certain fear and it just simply perpetuates another layer. We definitely have a worth hierarchy that blends with the threads of the seeds of memory. And now let us look for a bit at the island of Rhodes that we've mentioned. And at Rhodes, Byzantine times, the law, sea laws, maritime insurance, and history, Rhodian laws. Look any of those up if you want. It's a jumble of words. This set of laws articulates the general average principle of marine insurance established on the island of Rhodes in approximately 1000 to 800 BC, plausibly by the Phoenicians during the proposed Dorian invasion and emergence of the purported Sea Peoples during Greek Dark Ages that led to the proliferation of the Doric Greek dialect. I am not a historian. Take a lot of what I'm going to say with a grain of salt. I don't need to keep saying that, but I do just to remind you because I'm weaving and I don't want you to get imprinted upon too deeply here, although I can only do so much about that. I just trust that you are also autonomous. But I don't know what all of history really is, and I believe we're alive during a time where much more will be found to not be what we thought it was, and at the same time, it's important that we keep certain historical record accurate. What is the language called? Doric, Dorian, West Greek, a group of ancient Greek dialects, one of them being Koine. It's not actually coin, but I'm saying it like that because I like that it fits in with me talking about coins. Koinos, koine, common, ordinary. Apokoinu, meaning in common. Ap also means water, like ops means I. Cenobite, a member of a religious order living in common. No, not the Cenobites. They're fictional, extra-dimensional, and seemingly demonic beings who appear in the works of Clive Barker from Hellraiser. Cenobite in the Hellraiser franchise represents a member of the masochistic religious community, Priest of Leviathan, though. Look at this map I found this year. Oh, it's downstairs. It was a map that my mom had found. Funny enough, last week my mom gave me another map she found. Like I've mentioned, I'm pretty sure our house burned down when I was 15, and I thought we lost more things than we did. And there's random things like a project map from my eighth grade year, but it's funny to see. So in this map, it had Dorians, Ionians, and Aeolians, and Minoan, Mycenaean map. That's when I studied ancient Greek in school. So this is where we have the Doric Koine exhibiting common peculiarities of all Doric dialects. And I won't go on and on here, but I just want to share the synchronicities as much of this journey as highlighting how very literal the fabric of reality is. So I wish I had remembered to grab the map, but it's also not a big old deal. Telchines operating over a distance. Looking at the etymology from my lens. Operating over spine. A spine story. The the body of the people. Telepathy. Direct communication of one mind with another by extraordinary phenomena. 1882, coined along with telesthesia by English psychologist Frederick Myers. Etymologically, feeling from afar, from tele plus pathy. The purported vicarious transmission of information from one person's mind to another's without using any known human sensory channels or physical interaction. Mm, mm, mm. I'm sending a telepathic message. If you get it, write it in the comments. It's random, and I won't give any hints. Telesthesia, telepathy, perception at a distance. 1882, a word in Latin form from Greek elements. For first, see tele. Second is the Greek aesthesis, feeling, with the root au, to perceive. In early occult and spiritualist literature, remote viewing was known as telesthesia and traveling clairvoyance. Rosemary Guiley described it as seeing remote or hidden objects clairvoyantly with the inner eye or in alleged out-of-body travel. I didn't know what to call all that as a kid. I just know I still don't always love going to sleep because don't I don't want to get into like a I'm not like other people. Do you hear those? I don't know if you can hear those squirrels. Maybe they're doing it at me. I'm like, stop telling the secrets. Um, but some of my anxiety generally as an adult comes from me being worried about the future as a kid. And so it just doesn't land when people are talking about certain things and how we all had some experience that we all didn't have. It just fits into their story, and that's nice and that's great. But sometimes in my dream world, there are just places I haven't been able to figure out. And I don't love going there. And we don't need to get into that. But I know when it comes to like not remote viewing, but like astral projection or whatever people call it. I remember flying around my neighborhood a lot as a kid and like trying to wake up my friends and seeing them in their beds and being like, am I creepy? I just didn't have like a hold on it. Okay, so mentioning the spine, we're gonna do a little bit of ascension glossary sprinkling with some more grains of salt, and we're talking about the spine of Albion. Albion, ancient name of England, attested in Old English from Latin, sometimes said to be from the non, and this is from etymologyonline.com, this part, I believe, from the Indo-European base alb, meaning mountain, which also is suggested as the source of Latin Alps, Albania, and Alba, Alba as an Irish name for Scotland. But more likely from Latin albus, white, which would be an apt description of the chalk cliffs of the island's southern coast. Another nod to white and that, what is it? Whichever chakra's white that I can't think of right now. The Aquafarian blue feather shield is to help clear out the Yahweh matrix and Metatronic infection of reversal light coding in the Earth human 12 tribes DNA coding and tribal shield. This appears to be rehabilitating the architecture in the planetary Albion body, in which the structure for the spine of Albion has intersected with the blue feather host shield into the silver sanctum and the Lyran platforms, and then out of the golden gateway into the god worlds. The elemental re-encryption change occurring in the spine of Albion impacts the bone matrix in the human 12 tribes, which appears to release the 1D death seal and help to free the blood, bones, and tissue from intergenerational blood covenants and inherited miasmatic patterns that were manifested from the alien genetic bonds and their modifications. I always ponder how we got our stories here, how there's a certain point in agreed upon to a degree human history that there was no stories, and boom, bam, we have stories. And I don't mean just fairy tales. I mean legends and historical texts and, supposed proof and evidence of whatever. There are some of the things we've talked about already that do, in my mind, speak about the physiology and the anatomy when it comes to our blood and our bones. And some thickening of blood, you could say, is in colder regions of the world, and those regions are often where there are still more, like, it doesn't have to be where it all is cold, but it's a certain area, like Scandinavia, Norway, Irish, Scott, like, some of these places where, what is it, Iceland, which is not the cold one, but where they're like, yeah, elves. Elves are real, duh. So again, it says AG there because that's from Ascension Glossary. So sorry if you hate Ascension Glossary, but we're going to read a little bit more. The Albion is the androgynous human template created from the 12 spheres of the Tree of Life, which during the fall of humankind became buried in the lower dimensional fields of the earth, waiting to be awakened. This elemental structure of the primordial human template is located in the earth body and is made of the original cosmic blueprint. This original blueprint records the divine plan for humanity's ascension to the silicate matrix and holds the celestial records of humankind's evolution throughout the solar system. The awakening Albion occurs in progressive stages, and recent Sirius and Canopus star transmissions are intelligently designed to stimulate the higher mind activation through the Albion body in the earth. So if you ever catch yourself in the last 5, 10 years or whatever, just staring at Sirius and then having some realization, it could be part of that. This gently accelerates the shift in the mental body of the earth to reflect the higher mind consciousness, which is reflected in the stages of awakening Albion. Tree etymology. By the way, the plural of tree in Middle English is treen. I don't remember why I put that there, but my nickname is Tree, so I probably thought that was funny. But I also, because instead of trees, it's treen. I love the treen. Perennial plant growing from the ground with a self-supporting stem or trunk from which branches grow. Trio, triao, tree, timber, wood, beam, log, stake, trewam, tray, trio, tree, true, druo, deru, be firm, solid, steadfast, with specialized senses, wood, tree, and derivatives referring to objects made of wood. High German derived word for tar, Dutch boom, German Baum, which we'll come back into at some point. Beam, living tree, rafter, post, ship's timber, gallows, ray of light, pillar of fire, greatest breadth of a ship. Am I gonna read all of this? I think I might. I think I might just read it all. Sit back and take it in or don't. Be like, this sucks. I'm not listening to this. And I don't care or mind at all. Let me take a sip of water. When the Albion light body is activated through the Emerald Order Cosmic Heart and fully awakened by the Amethyst Order Holy Father, England, Scotland, Ireland, and France will be the first demographic areas to align to the King Arthur timeline through the rise of Arthur and Albion. By the way, I live on a street called Seven Courts, and I live in Nottingham, Maryland. There's definitely a lot of lore here to do with the King Arthur legends. Don't come stalk me, okay? um, This phase of the ascension timeline awakens the stasis beings that have been buried deep in the lands and brings on oceanic waves of the God source and the Christos Sophia rainbow rays or round tables to pour into the earth grids. The Albion light body is the diamond sun template of humanity's world soul from Tara as the Christos incarnate masculine feminine identity. And it holds the instruction set of the Palladorian covenant, which is the future record and destiny of all humankind to return back to their original spiritual home. Their inner sun star, which is found deep in the raw center of the still point in the angelic human light body. Arthurian legend. The Arthurian legends are extremely ancient archetypal memories of humanity's origins that go back into the galactic history of Lyra and Gaia, as these particular memories have been seeded directly into the Albion light body in the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom landmass holds both the Magi Grail King masculine architecture for 6D planetary wings and the Magi Grail King female 7D planetary wings architecture in one central location in the Albion light body, which apparently has features of the geomantic structure or of geomantic structure that are completely unique and unlike any other continent on the planet. I don't know if you can hear my cardinal friend, but I like them. I just want him to know I love you. Where was I? This section of the Albion located within this island nation's landmass operates as a powerful headquarters for global awakening and shifting timelines. The awakening Albion holds an important key that brings unification between the sacred rod and staff architecture within the planet, which is the metaphorical holy grail that announces the move into the next harmonic universe and opens the timeline of the golden age of ascension. You know, I don't want to say a lot of Ascension glossary is just Whitey McWhite stuff, but some of it is. And so I again say you can find everything and anything and cater this to, let's say it's not all about the UK in this regard. And there are different ways to view this. That's why it would be so ever important for people to remain true to themselves so they could emanate an energy that it doesn't matter so specifically about the correctness and rightness for everybody else, but a beingness. I don't know. Hyperborean Albions. We already spoke to some Hyperborean energies earlier, having to do with the Olympian energies, and like we talked about the Northern Lights. So let's see what this says. This is more Ascension glossary stuff. The Hyperboreans are the root races from seventh dimensional Earth known as Gaia. Hyperboreans are important because this was the timeline of the original trauma of the fall that happened to the human race. This is where the split in time occurred, and this is when the moon was brought to the planet as its companion satellite to manage the gravitational field. Gravity is going to be very hot topic in the coming years. The Hyperborean, I'll just say that. I just won't say anything more. The Hyperborean period on Gaia was humanity's golden age. This level of monadic identity was fully connected and fully embodied in Christ consciousness. When the electric wars happened to the Hyperboreans, they were split apart from their higher spiritual counterparts in Polaris. On the 7D Gaian body, which is the monad planet of the Earth, the Hyperboreans existed as a consciousness. Currently, that consciousness has an access point in the timelines in the northern part of our planet in the United Kingdom. I also want to note that if we were to look at 12 sign and 13 sign astrology, signs 1 through 7 are the ones that would stay the same. I guess you could say 1 through 8 because Ophiuchus would come after Scorpio. But that's why I just feel like it's interesting there. There's something interesting there. With the latest transmissions, mind you, this is grabbed from Ascension Glossary from whenever that means by latest or recent. With the latest transmissions of galactic law, the planet is intersecting with the Hyperboreans timeline in the seventh dimension, which are the original histories of humanity's fall from the Edenic state. Edenic. The current aeonic pairs, herogamic unions, are being taken out of the dimensional door of trans-time continuum, TTC. My initials are TCT. To experience the infinite space of God worlds in order to bring back that specific timeline memory to this density of Earth. The Albion body contains the collective memory record of the human experience in the 7D timelines on Gaia. The divine plan is to find and locate the pieces of the Albion body, which awaken the world soul through the galactic zodiac and star transmissions. Ultimately, this integrates all the broken mirrors into the Albion body, which then can unite with the Cathar body of Mother. This is the alchemical wedding of the masculine and feminine principle, which is the marriage of spirit and matter on the earth in this ascending timeline. I will say I have a I'll bring it up again at some point, but like me, I'm not here to tell you to follow a certain kind of astrology. I really don't think we're here to tell each other how to see things. I don't think Like I know, and I know what she's saying, Lisa Renee, she's talking about galactic zodiac, but then she goes from the galactic zodiac, which is like more the IAU NASA boundaries anyway. So it's like another layer of like, well, like, is that it? No, then you got to move to a different one, which is fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. But I am going to focus on 12s and 13s to a degree throughout this. And if you're seeing this now, depending on where I'm at, you might find me doing 12 sign tropical human design chart readings too. Whoops. All right, let's continue. As we expand our consciousness, our spiritual mission, I'm doing Lisa Renee, is to facilitate the preparations for this sacred union of the Albion and Cathar bodies as we bring our witness to the ceremony that takes place during the alchemical wedding. The alchemical wedding is also called Herosgamos or Herogami. The Albion body has energy chakras and consciousness centers. I'll stop. That make up entire, because I like how I read it better. The Albion body has energy chakras and consciousness centers that make up entire sections of his body, which represent principles recorded in the earth to expand solar consciousness and beyond. When the Albion body is asleep, it exists in states of unconsciousness and generates darkness, understood as the dead light of the Luciferian consciousness. To awaken Albion is to rehabilitate the unconsciousness of the Luciferian forces, fallen angelics, on Earth to the self-realized higher consciousness of the Christic self and the diamond sun DNA that recognizes it is one with all things. So before I go on, I will mention Stranger Things later. I probably already brought it up at some point, but I'm rewatching it right now because, for one, I like it. But for two, the next season's about to come out, and I'm doing a little bit of from this lens of the Grain of Salt slash 88 series. Like, we'll talk about Wizard of Oz here, and I never noticed watching it before that the one cop calls the Department of Energy Emerald City in Hawkins. And I will relate Will to me and my own experience when I was little, but I digress about that and do want to touch on that. So spoiler alert if you haven't watched Stranger Things at all. But even in the first season, they show the difference with the lights flickering and the mirrored of the, right side up and the upside down, and how someone could be moving in the upside down and could be tracked by lights in the right side up. One thing that is about me is my whole life, flickering lights are like my tell for things. Like just my whole life, I've seen flickering lights when other people haven't, and that's when I've been like, oh, there's something going on. And yet, if we do look at a lot of media, a lot of things are led to make us scared of things. Even certain stories are designed to web in a way that makes certain parts of your body activate, and you think, but I invite you to look at the lens of part of the first season, even when Hopper and Joyce are in the upside down walking around, and Nancy and what's his name? And Steve, I can't remember his name right now. Um, they're seeing the lights move where Joyce and Hopper are. And yet, when the Demigorgon moved in the upside down, the same thing happened where they could track it via lights. And so anything in this upside down, and you'll see if you've watched the show how that works out, but there's more lore there. But what I'm kind of saying is that like things that are the big bad are also just us in another way. And it can be hard for us to see that because we do want that justice. And yet There's something to like everyone having a certain role and us being able to like let go of something or die to something or just go, okay, I really wanted it to go this way, but in fact, it might have to be this way. And I think for a lot of us, especially if you're a millennial, especially if you're born in 88 or if your birthday aligns with the numbers 88, um, you were here to fuck shit up in the best way possible. And there's something to the timing of being alive in this time. And I, I honestly, I forgot what I was about to say. I got distracted. So we're going to continue on. That's something, call me back in. We'll come back to it. It is said that the Telchines were sorcerers, malevolent evil wizards, envious demons, feared for their destructive magic and shape-shifting abilities, magic labeled as demonic, daemons, transcendent merfolk. They were also described as respected artisans who forged weapons for the gods, had unmatched metallurgic skills. They were guardians who nurtured Poseidon. They said that they've potentially said to have potentially forged his trident and Zeus's unident or lightning bolt. It is said that they had flippers or fin-like hands, dog-like heads. They were merfolk. They had a human upper body and a fish lower body, with skin like echinoids, sea urchins. Born from Tartarus, primordial father of monsters, and Nemesis, goddess of retribution. Retribution meaning to give in return, repayment, recompense, recompensate. I was like, I can't say it. Recompense, hand back. Nemesis as a goddess of vengeance, the personification of divine wrath, just indignation, righteous anger, distribution of what is due, divine allotment to everyone, his, her share of fortune, good or bad. We're talking consequences, baby. Or were their parents Pontus and Gaia? Or were they birthed from Thalassa? Or from Uranus's blood, the primordial god and personification of the sky, castrated by his son, Kronos or Saturn, and his scythe. Or were they children of the protogenoi, primordial gods who established the tangible fabric of the universe, elemental forces personified? The Telchines were potentially ancient beings who existed at a time similar to the Titans before the Olympian gods. They were believed to be the first to work and shape iron and bronze into tools and weapons. Also, sculpted stone and the first marble statues of gods. These statues were said to be so lifelike that they frightened people, and there were circulated stories of them coming alive at night. It is said that they crafted the scythe of Kronos, the trident of Poseidon, and that the trident or psi symbol represents not just Poseidon, but the Telchines as well. Others say the Cyclops of the dactyls were the ones who held these skills and stories, or held these skills. Stories, stories, stories. Dactyl, shout out, Dactyl and Spondy. It is said that after they forged Poseidon's trident, they and their power turned to hubris, one of my favorite words, one of my favorite things to call people. So hubristic. And led, not favorite like in a nice way, but favorite if I'm trying to be like, call someone a jerk in a different way. Anyway, it led to their downfall and caused them harm, and they cursed those they suspected of wanting to learn their secret art and craft, so they became suspicious. They changed. They weren't the Telkines they were before. The Telkines' very eyes and aspects were said to have been destructive. They could shapeshift into any form, and they had the ability to control nature, creating lightning, snow, earthquakes, hail, manipulating the seas. They could produce a poisonous substance that could harm all living things, made from the Stygian water, the river of Styx, and sulfur. Not the river of Styx, but the river Styx. Some say they were destroyed by Zeus's thunderbolt or by Poseidon with his trident. Something to think about is that the different stories show them being eventually killed by the very weapons they had forged. Although it is also said that they were killed by a flood or by Apollo as a wolf, but without going further here, as we dip and dive and bob and weave, let us for now take a look into the sister of the Telchines, Halia. So even though it says thank you, we are going to continue here. Um, Not for too much longer. Let me take a little pause. I love sharing this stuff because it's like a lot of things other people have shared, but I guess I'm sharing it in a way to show people you don't have to know everything. I just kind of and we're not all the same, and that's partially why I do like human design, is the language I can use to describe the way I do process. But I find for those who relate, if you just let everything be alive in a certain way, it speaks to you. And when you acknowledge things, they come back and acknowledge you in a certain way. And you can learn a lot in ways that are things that people are learning through reading and studying, but that you don't have to do it in that way. Not to say you shouldn't, but I'm just saying there are many ways to do things, and this is how I do them. So, as mentioned, the sister of the Telchines was Halia, and it is said that she bore sons with Poseidon. But first, let's focus more on Rhodes. Rhodes, Rhodos, Rhodes, Rhodon, Rose, from whence comes our word rhododendron, literally meaning rose tree, and the name of the color red. Rhodi, Roido, pomegranate. Rhode, Rod, a. Also the name of a maidservant in the house of John Mark's mother at Jerusalem. We have the Telchines as the Telchines, often considered the original inhabitants of Rhodes. So there's literally Rhodes has been called Telchines. Helios, and we have here the word Erod, E-R-O-D, Phoenician for snake, since the island was home to many snakes in antiquity. Rhoda also refers to the pink hibiscus on the island. We have related word here, rhodites, meaning rose flavored, rhodocrus, meaning rose colored, and rhodocolpos, meaning rosy bosomed. Interesting synchronicities so far with the word rose and the words rose and pomegranate, almost like all is connected and that which we acknowledge shines forth, but also the cycles, the stories, the roles, the themes, all connected in some way, shape, or form, ever changing, ever connected. Sometimes I go on and I talk and then I read and I'm like, oh, I must have been picking up on what I was about to read. So I should just stick to reading. Expansion, Rode. Rhoda, meaning rose bush, from the noun rode, road. In the Bible, it is said that Rhoda was a servant girl who worked for Mary, the mother of John Mark. She famously refrained from opening the door for the calling Peter after the angel of the Lord had freed him from prison. When she ran in to say that Peter is at the door, the others snarled at her and said she was mad. It may be Rhoda. It may be that Rhoda was under orders not to open the door for anyone because the believers were afraid for persecution. This reference to the name and the island may suggest that Rhoda personifies something of the legacy of Rhodes as it helped Peter find safety. In the Salts of Salvation book, Peter means stone, aka minerals, or the material we build with, or that keystone. From the same website, in connecting different threads that are actually from the very same fabric. Cinderella as the poor peasant girl who endears the king. Shout out to anyone in my Patreon group. And we just went over that color, cinder blue. Anyway, the origin of the modern Cinderella story is traced to that of Rhodopis, means red-eyed or rosy-eyed. The opus part comes from ops, eye, hence also the familiar Cyclops or round eye. Also see ophis, snake. and is, the feminine adjective suffix. The comparable term, glaucopis, or bright-eyed, was a Homeric epithet of Athena, first written by Strabo around the year 0, but possibly based on materials that had existed since deep antiquity in the sea of memory. Another Luke's name of the slave girl by the fire as Rhoda may very well be translated as Cinda or Cindy. And here the idea is that the ultimate source of the story of Cinderella is the Bible. Not my idea, but what this website was saying. And if you know the Salts of Salvation book that I've referenced, that's taking the Bible and other mythical and spiritual texts and stories and saying, actually, it's about our body, which our body isn't just a physical vessel. Okay, continued from, I believe, that website. The ultimate source of the story of Cinderella is the Bible, also because the ultimate source of pretty much all Western archetypes is the Bible. She is the poor peasant girl who endears the king, told most clearly in the Song of Solomon and reversed in the story of Joseph taking over the solar cult at On or Heliopolis, the Hebrew take on the Greek story of the less successful Icarus. Sorry, that was worded weird. As the embodiment of everything sweet, she is Nama. Any sort of artistic expression, the proverbial sister of all domestication, government, and technology. She is Damascus or Aram. She is Esther of Persia. She is Venus, the morning star, of whom Isaiah cried, "How have you fallen from heaven, O star of the morning," which I believe is Lucifer, right? She is Artemis, she is Helen of Troy, and she is the phoenix, the eagle-like bird who rises from the ashes of her demise. The Phoenicians had once been instrumental in the construction of Solomon's temple, but had fallen from grace by the time of the exile, only to resurrect the Syro-Phoenician mother and her demonized daughter in Roman times, an obvious commentary on once glorious Tyre and unfortunate colony of Carthage. So there's a lot there because I am not a religious person, and I know the Bible doesn't need to be all religious, but I'm not here to spin those stories more, but I am here to share just that. And then we're dipping back into other things. The island of Rhodes is said by Pindar to be born of the union of the sun god Helios and the nymph Rhodes, who also represents the personification of the island itself. So more stories adding on to what we looked at earlier. Rhodes' parents are sometimes said to be Poseidon and Amphitrite or Halia, or just Aphrodite, or sometimes Poseidon and Aphrodite. Funny enough, the story goes that Helios had no place of the earth to rule or roam. He was absent in the drawing for such geographic locations. He complained to Zeus, and he offered a redraw instead. Oh, and he offered a redraw. Instead, Helios asked for consent to claim an island that would soon rise. He had a vision about it, and after it rose from the sea, he lay with her and produced 7 sons. Another story is that Helios himself caused the island to disappear by water overflowing, and that after he named the island after his wife, Rhodes. Helios and Rhodos had 7 sons. One named Actus is said to travel to Egypt and built the city Heliopolis and taught astrology. There's lots of loops, lots of stories. Who knows? But we're getting into some interesting twists and turns here. Rhodes, Order of Malta, and Rhodes. And again, I'm sharing this for whatever reasons, but like I didn't know about the Order of Malta or the Order of Moles, Rhodes. I didn't know about the Knights of Malta. I didn't know about this stuff consciously. You could say it was been subconscious because it came forth for some reason. So take it with a grain of salt, but also, recollect the journey that I'm weaving here and from which angles, but see how many things come into play that are also dealing with current events to a degree. When it comes to Rhodes and business, it has been a major grain, of course, trade role player. And when it comes to business practices, what other roles has Rhodes had to play? Well, let us chat a bit about something I have briefly mentioned called the Order of Malta, aka the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, aka the Sovereign Military Hospitaller Order of St. John of Jerusalem, of Rhodes, and of Malta, and commonly known as the Order of Malta or the Knights of Malta. And here we focus a bit on the Rhodian cross, too. From Wikipedia. Evil old Wikipedia. This is a Catholic lay religious order, traditionally of a military, chivalric, and noble nature. No territory. It's a sovereign entity under international law. The order claims continuity with the Knights Hospitaller, a chivalric order that was founded about 1099 by the Blessed Gerard in the Kingdom of Jerusalem. The order is led by an elected prince and grand master. Its motto is Tuitio Fidei et obsequiam pauperum, defense of the faith and assistance to the poor. Yeah, right. I don't buy it. But look at this. Not mentioned in the description, but looks like the ermine furs in the background there. So we have the cross and the cross again and the cross again. And I'm not sure what all these other things, like I'm not sure what this knot represents and the tassels, and I'm not sure about this motif and the direction of the geometry. I don't know about these beads, if that's like a certain, like it's all got to mean something, but there's the crown and yet another cross. And even these flowers can be representations of the cross, but everything means something. And I'm pointing out, of course, the ermine furs, which, if you remember, I wasn't looking for the ermine stuff in this way, but the way that it came up on that page, if you remember, I went to the Wikipedia page and showed you the images that we could see on the page, and then I clicked through, and there were two that weren't seen on the page, but they were there. So they were there. You just had to know how to look for them, to pay attention enough in a widespread view in the periphery, let's say, to know what to hone in on. The Order of Malta, or the Order of Rhodes, was established circa 1099, 926 years ago. The birth of the Knights Hospitaller dates back to around 1048. Merchants from the ancient marine Republic of Amalfi obtained from the Caliph of Egypt the authorization to build a church, convent, and hospital in Jerusalem to care for pilgrims of any religious faith or race. In 15 February 1113, Pope Pascal II approved the foundation of the hospital and placed it under the aegis of the Holy See, granting it the right to freely elect its superiors without interference from other secular or religious authorities. By virtue of the papal bull, the hospital became an order exempt from the control of the local church. So we have here 1291 to 1310 Cyprus, which, what does Cyprus mean? Copper. 1310 to 1523, we have Rhodes or Rose. 1530 to 1798, we have Malta. 1805 to 1812, there's division. It's not the same. There's no one place, even though there isn't really a place because it's a sovereign order. 1834 to present, we have Rome. Cue me in Rome in 2011, not knowing any of this stuff, but also following my own stuff, being at the Vatican and being like, I don't like it here. It feels weird here. All right, I'm going to take a break, go to the bathroom real quick, and then I'll read a little bit more before wrapping up. Yeah, so I'm going to have to cut this off at some point and just go into the next one because I don't want these to go over 90 minutes. That way, if you're watching, I'm on 2 speed. It will be 45 minutes max. But I paused this a couple times, so I'm not exactly sure where I'm at. So I think I'm gonna set. Do I even have anything with me? Hold on, I'm gonna pause it again. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna do my best to not go over 90 minutes, but given that I'm guessing here, I'm gonna go for 15 more minutes and then just wrap it up once I get there. Or we'll see what happens. Not meaning I'll go longer, but we'll see. Okay, so I was just running around. Okay. Continuing on here. Rhodes, Order of Malta, Order of Rhodes, the cross. As time went on, the order adopted the white eight-pointed cross that is still its symbol today. The 8 points represent the 8 beatitudes. How do you say that? Someone answer me. Beatitudes. The beatitudes that Jesus pronounced in his sermon. Oh, he mocking me? He must have pronounced them correctly in his Sermon on the Mount. 1310, Grand Master Fra Fulare de Villaret, knights regrouped on the island of Rhodes, the motto being Hail, thou white cross. The Maltese cross stems from the Rhodian cross, Knights of St. Joseph, who were led by the Turkish from Rhodes to make pilgrimage to the mother goddess known to be in Malta of the early 16th century. The Rhodian cross didn't quite have the sharp arrowhead appearance like the Maltese cross. And these are just some different variations, different crosses, similar. And this is making me think of where our eyes cross in our heads and the white matter. We'll get there. So, Grandmaster Pierre de Bausson, I don't know how you say that, with senior knights. I'll stop saying that. I don't know how to say stuff again because it is what it is. Rhodian cross on their habits. Dedicore miniature in Gestorum Rhodi Obsidionis Commentari, the account of the siege of the Rhodes. So this is an obsidian cross. Uh, but you see these white crosses here, so maybe it's talking about the obsidian robe. Or I'm just assuming obsidian means like black or whatever. So it sort of looks like four fish tails facing away from each other. So what I did here was I put four fish tails, like I could, do that and put it back because I was like, it looks like that. Let me make a cross with four fish tails. So, to protect its heritage against fraud, the order has legally registered 16 versions of its names and the emblems in some 100 countries. Oops, let me note that 8 plus 8 is 16, of course. So, up here, I don't know if when I move my face, it actually moves it for you. I don't think so. But in the right here, what that says is Maltese cross. So, that's like the typical Maltese cross that you'll see. And often, though, you will not hear people talking about Rhodes with this, but I am wanting to I want to focus on that a bit, clearly. The Maltese cross is a cross symbol consisting of four V or arrowhead-shaped concave quadrilaterals converging at a central vertex at right angles, two tips pointing outwards symmetrically. It is a heraldic cross variant which developed from earlier forms of eight-pointed crosses in the 16th century, although chiefly associated with the Knights Hospitaller, and by extension with the island of Malta. It has come to be used by a wide array of entities since the early modern period, notably the Order of St. Stephen, the City of Amalfi, the Polish Order of the White Eagle, the Prussian Order of Poelemerite, I don't know, and the Bavarian, so I said I wouldn't say I don't know. I know a lot. The Bavarian Military Merit Order. Some say the 8 points are connected to the 8 languages or tongues of the Knights Hospitaller. I say it's connected to the 8th dimensional energies. And 8th layers like 8th chakra, higher heart, 8th zodiac sign, Scorpio, etc. So we got that 8, 8, 8, 8, baby. In 1798, Napoleon led the French occupation of Malta. Napoleon demanded from Grand Master Ferdinand von Hompesch zu Bolheim that his ships be allowed to enter the port and take on water and supplies. The Grand Master replied that only 2 foreign ships could be allowed to enter the port at a time. Bonaparte, aware that such a procedure would take a long time and leave his forces vulnerable to British Admiral Horatio Nelson, immediately ordered a cannon fusillade against Malta. The French soldiers disembarked in Malta at 7 points on the morning of 11 June and attacked. After several hours of fierce fighting, the Maltese in the west were forced to surrender. Although the operation has shifted various locations after it was more established in Malta, the name Order of Malta has been maintained. Of course, I am touching around here and there is much more history here. So take a look into it for yourself if you want to, but I will continue to weave here. One note that I wanted to add about the Grandmasters in this order is that they were quite obsessed with coins and wanting to have and obsessed with having their face on them. Obsession with face. Saving face, face value, being known, being seen, being referred to, being quoted, etc., etc. I want to note that Malta's independence was gained on September 21st, 1964. All these modern independent dates. Now let's touch back on some Ascension glossary nods. Let me check my time here. We're good. And what the site has to say about the Order of Malta. The Sovereign Military Order of Malta is a closed fraternity of Roman Catholics, the majority of which are direct descendants of the highest black nobility of the aristocratic Luciferian or Satanic bloodlines, often serving in the military. Many have extensive ancestral records connecting them to aristocratic coats of arms, going back multiple hundreds of years, and are further linked to ancient Carthage, Luciferian Knights Temple factions, Templar factions, and more recently, German-linked Nazism. Nazi, cannot see. It is well known that some of the death camp scientists and high-ranking Nazis were issued false identities with sovereign knights of Malta passports that allowed them to escape from prosecution of war crimes. The Order of Malta is a non-territorial state whose headquarters are in the city of Rome and has the status of extraterritoriality as if it were an embassy, which gives its members diplomatic immunity. Sovereign Military Order of Malta, SMOM, 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 like a whole false mother within itself, even though that's where the mother goddess was said to be. We have snakes from ancient Rhodes, and makes me think of Ireland and St. Patrick's and driving out all the snakes and how all the women were taken out of like everything here. And not like, not that it's full on men versus women, but like the idea in fucking 2025 that women should be lucky to be in certain positions that they're in. It's like, oof. I believe a lot of these stories were like not written all for one purpose, but if they were, that they were, it was known that they would be translated and taken in many different ways as such a story goes. And you could say that only certain people would interpret it in certain ways. You could say that the real secret societies are just us as women. Even if you're a man watching this, I'm sure you've been a woman in another lifetime. The Order of Malta is an internationally recognized sovereign state similar to the Vatican that uses the inverted outer facade of being a charitable humanitarian organization when its primary function is to maintain controller-based power for the negative alien agenda, NAA, at all costs. It operates as another secret society brotherhood for the protection of the NAA controllers' interests, run through the unholy global alliance, as well as their prominent members of aristocracy, politicians, finance bankers, aristocracy, business leaders, and military intelligence agencies, such as those embedded in the CIA and M16. Again, more on the CIA and governmental programs soon. The holographic geography of the Cygnus constellation star map is overlaid on top of the United Kingdom landmass, and the NAA utilized this inversion of the Templar cross with Cygnus for the purpose of inverting 1111 gateways. We're about almost at November 11th. In the United Kingdom, which included the Beast Machine's 11th dimensional Doth system of Typhon tunnels. The inversion of the Templar cross and the Maltese cross was an active Antichrist curse made against the authentic Essene Christos Templars by putting the 11D code technology into the hands of Luciferian Templars, with many of these lineages performing child sacrifice, satanic rituals in the controller pyramid. The comprehension of the esoteric power that comes from that comes with controlling the planetary Templar in order to control timelines by wielding the power of the Templar cross that opens into 11D Typhon tunnels and links into Thuban star is the real meaning behind the symbol of the Maltese cross. This planetary power source in the Albion gives to the controllers by the NAA's beast machine architecture is why the controllers and their secret societies regularly flaunt the Templar or Maltese cross as a powerful status symbol upon their royal regalia or uniforms. Regalia. Regalia. The Maltese cross was an emblem of the Knights of St. Joseph, who were led by the Turkish from Rhodes to make the pilgrimage to the mother goddess known to be in Malta. I already said some of this. The cross of the eight beatitudes or of the beatitudes is an eight-pointed cross that the Templars used as a key for the construction and decipherment of a secret alphabet. It would also serve as a base symbol for the octagonal layout of the Templar chapels. The Knights of Malta wore uniforms similar to the Luciferian Knights Templar, in which they stylized the cross we see on their uniforms as a representation of having gained control over the planetary Templar and movement of photons of light that create time. And this is commonly known as the Maltese cross. So if you remember in the beginning when I showed the numbers 88 next to each other, and I said you could look at this as also kind of like the top of quadrants, four quadrants, and you could also look at like the swastika shapes and different geometries to see that there's a lot of ways that you can tap into this energy. I don't believe the control is as such, but I do believe the mind is a very powerful space to weave certain glamours and other things to just get people to comply in certain ways. So it's almost like engineered consent. Okay, so thus the Maltese cross is a common feature of the monarch's crown and pope's religious garments, representing that he or she is the head of these orders and directing world events by control of the inner Templar and divine rule. The Protestant branch of the Knights of Malta is the Order of St. John of Jerusalem. Queen Elizabeth II was appointed as the sovereign head, which is said to be ordained to give unwavering obedience to carry out the direction of world affairs as relayed by the Black Pope. Thus, many may not be aware that Queen Elizabeth II was given the title of Queen of Malta and that she visited the island frequently, and she even has or had her own personal flag. Okay, she has it still. I just mean that she has passed away since then. Um, her own personal flag and a memorial plaque in Valletta. Prince Philip was stationed in Malta as an officer of the Royal Navy, in which Queen Elizabeth II and then Princess Elizabeth and Duchess of Edinburgh lived in Villa Guardamangia in Pieta on Malta between November 1949 and 1951. Interesting timing. Malta was a part of the British Commonwealth of Nations until 1964. Princess Elizabeth thus became the Queen of Malta and the head of Commonwealth of Nations at the coronation. However, it can be noted that monarchs all over the world throughout the ages have worn a version of the Maltese cross on their tiaras or crowns, in which the Maltese cross is connected to the Templar architecture that was underneath Malta and in the ultimate control and direction of the Vatican, along with NAA protection. So she was the only monarch of the state of Malta, which existed from 1964 to 74, and that is her there, of course. So we're gonna actually wrap this up. Maybe I'll read just this. Um, but I want to note, and I'll talk about Malta some more, but there is like the cave energy in Malta where they say underground. There are places like tunnels where you can emit a certain tone and that it will, I forget the word, but something about resonance and reverberation and it echoing and resounding much louder as if there was a whole chorus of people singing or toning. So, just another interesting layer that we'll come back to of the potency and impotency of a place like Malta, but also that everything is everywhere. So there's a Malta everywhere. You could say I could pick up a little crumb and say everything that's here is there. But that's kind of a mind fuck depending on who you are. This is the last page I'll read here. Before continuing with some more Ascension glossary lore on the Order and Knights of Malta, seeing that Queen Elizabeth II was suited as the monarch of Malta. In the UK, she was the monarch of 15 realms at her death, like the 15-dimensional plane we have materialized in. Her reign of 70 years and 214 days is the longest of any British monarch, the second longest of any sovereign state, and the longest of any queen regnant in history. Regnant. The word monarch isn't rare, but so far we have talked about one other monarch, Poseidon. When looking at the word and typing up these slides, I was looking at the word monarch differently than I have before. Monarch. Mon and arc. And first I thought of the French word mon, meaning my arc, my path, my geometry. And this isn't to say a hyper individualistic place is the way to go, but that we can only pay attention to ourselves. Uh, like, let me rephrase this. We can only hold so much of other people. But what we can do is really acknowledge and respect and honor our own selves and see ourselves truly in everyone else and treat them as such, as if they were another version of self. To me, there is no togetherness without the individual being honored. So it's not this or that or versus. Um, we don't need to make it all about us, and yet at the same time, there is time for each of us to shine amongst a group in a certain way. So where is that slide? Thank you. Until next time.